project, assuming you do?
So yeah, the idea is that we want to see if what the new features we add or the refactorings we do have an impact on the carbon emissions of user scenario. That's where the difficulty lies, because a program doesn't have a carbon footprint per se. Usage of a program has a carbon footprint. A user scenario has a carbon footprint, right? So we have to design user scenarios that are constant when we change the code, right? And that's quite hard, to be honest, because we have built demos, like we have built an e-commerce demo, a CRM demo, a help desk demo, and what we can do is when we modify the demo without modifying the functionality, then we compare the footprint of the two applications with a GreenFrame, and that happens very seldom, I'd say, because most of the time the reason why we modify the React admin code is because we add functionality, we add new functionality. But we particularly use it when we do performance optimization, because when we do performance optimization, the features don't change, and we expect that the carbon footprint will not increase, and ideally it will decrease. So that's when we use GreenFrame the most on React admin, and that's also what allows us to determine which practices are good for the environment as well, because you have many web performance optimization practices. Are they good or not regarding carbon footprints? Well, it depends. It depends. For instance, having smaller images will have your page load faster, and that's good for the carbon footprint. But moving all your assets to a CDN, which is a common practice, well, we don't know, because we don't know how much carbon the CDN servers emit, right? So we cannot answer that question. So this helps us validate or invalidate good practices regarding to web sustainability.
Do you publish any of these learnings that you have in terms of like practices that you found generally make things better or worse?
We're in the process of doing that. We regularly coach our customers about them. I've given a couple conferences in French regarding these matters, and we're slowly integrating these proven good practices into GreenFrame itself. The difficulty being that GreenFrame doesn't see the code, GreenFrame measures metrics at the system level, like CPU cycles, or the memory, or the network I/O, or the disk I/O. So we don't see the code. We don't see the code running. We know when we see a spike in the carbon emissions, we know when in a user scenario it happens, so you can relate that to a particular action. We know in which component of a N-tier architecture it happens. So it can be on the server, it can be on the reverse proxy, it can be on the client side, it can be on the network, etc. So you have clues about where the carbon leaks, that's how we call them, where the carbon leaks happen. But then it takes a bit of a habit and a bit of test and learn to determine the actual culprit, the actual piece of code. And that's why it's also great to have GreenFrame integrated into the continuous integration, because when you see a spike related to a PR, you know that it's the code in this PR that is responsible for the new emissions. So it's easier to find.
Yeah, that makes sense. It reminds me a lot of performance optimization. You're sort of like trying to trace down where's the bottleneck. You're trying to trace down what you called the leak, right? Does that sound right? Does it feel like the same thing?
Absolutely. It's the same discipline. And I'd say that's one more indicator that developers have to look at. They look at their unit tests. They look at the security vulnerabilities that they have. They look at the performance, and soon they will have to look at the carbon emissions, and they will have the same process, the same optimization process with these metrics as they have with performance. And yes, it's more or less the same process. Some of the practices are common, some are not. Some practices of web performance of web carbon optimization are totally counterintuitive. But yeah, it's similar.
It sounds fascinating. I'd love to have a much longer conversation about this. But I think this would be a good time to sort of segue into some more technical aspects of both React Admin and maybe the future of React Admin.